December 7th, 1941, 07:48 hours. Battleship Row, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The tropical sun glints off the calm waters of the lagoon, palm fronds rustling in the light trade winds. Your ensign John Jack Reed scrambling across the deck of the USS Arizona, the klaxon blaring like a wounded beast. Coffee mug still in hand from morning chow, you freeze as the wine pierces the air, high-pitched, descending. Zeros. Dozens of them, red suns blazing on their wings, diving from the cloudless sky like hawks on prey. Explosions rock the harbor, torpedoes slam into the Oklahoma's hull, her massive frame listing hard to port, sailors tumbling into the oil-slicked water. You dive for cover behind a 14-inch turret as a bomb punches through Arizona's forward magazine. The world erupts in orange flame and black smoke, the shock waves slamming you flat. Shrapnel whistles past, hot and deadly. Screams mix with the thunder of anti-aircraft guns finally sputtering to life, 5-inchers barking tracers into the swarm. From the bridge of the carrier Akagi, 200 miles north, Vice Admiral Chuichi Naguma watches through binoculars, his face impassive under the peaked cap. The first wave reports back, Tora, Tora, Tora. Surprise achieved. Battleships gutted, airfields aflame. But Nagumo's gut twists. Where are the American carriers? Lexington, Saratoga, Enterprise, absent, out on maneuvers. He signals the second wave, Thal dive bombers and Kate torpedo planes peeling off, engines roaring. Below decks on Arizona, you claw your way up from the inferno, uniform singed, lungs burning with acrid smoke. Comrades drag the wounded to the rails, but the ship is dying, her superstructure crumpling as another bomb hits home. Over 1,100 men trapped in the blaze. You leap into the water, oil coating your skin like tar, swimming for Ford Island amid the chaos. Machine gun fire from strafing Zeros stitches the waves around you. Aboard the flagship Nagato, back in Hiroshima Bay, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto paces the chart room, radio crackling with updates. The architect of this daring strike, Harvard-educated, poker-sharp strategist, had planned it meticulously. 6 carriers, 414 aircraft, a feint toward the Aleutians to mask the thrust at Hawaii. Cripple the U.S. Pacific Fleet in one blow, buy time for Japan to seize the oil-rich Dutch East Indies, fortify a defensive perimeter. But Yamamoto knows the risks. America's industrial might dwarfs Japan's. In the first 6 to 12 months, he'd warned the Naval General Staff, "I will run wild and win victory upon victory. But then, if the war continues, I have no expectation of success." The reports flood in. 8 battleships damaged or sunk, 188 aircraft destroyed on the ground, 2,403 Americans dead. A tactical triumph, yet Yamamoto's dark eyes narrow. No carriers hit, and the fuel depots, repair yards, untouched, as Nagumo recalls the third wave to preserve his force. A mistake? Yamamoto cables congratulations, but inwardly the doubt gnaws. He'd opposed war with America, arguing in memos to Prime Minister Kano that provoking the U.S. would be fatal. Anyone who has seen the auto factories in Detroit and the oil fields in Texas knows that Japan lacks the national power for a naval race with America. As the last Japanese planes wheel away, Pearl Harbor smolders, a graveyard of twisted steel and floating debris. You haul yourself onto the dock, gasping, watching the Arizona's turrets slip beneath the waves. Rage builds in your chest, hot as the fires still burning. Across the Pacific, in Tokyo, celebrations erupt, but Yamamoto retires to his cabin, staring at the map. The strike was flawless, yet he whispers to his aide, Captain Yasuji Watanabe, words that will echo through history. "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." Is that prophecy or dread?
As America stirs, factories gearing up from coast to coast, the Admiral senses the tide already shifting. But for now, the empire strikes south. Malaya, Singapore, the Philippines. Victories pile up. How long until the giant roars back? April 1942. The Indian Ocean, off the coast of Ceylon. Salt spray lashes the bridge of the carrier Akagi as Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo's mobile force slices through the swells at 30 knots. Your Lieutenant Commander Minoru Genda, chief planner of the Pearl Harbor strike, standing beside Yamamoto's liaison officer on the flagship. The air reeks of aviation fuel and hot steel as Zeros, Vals, and Kates catapult off the decks in perfect rhythm. Another raid, this one on British bastion Colombo. Below, the harbor erupts. Dive bombers plummet, sirens wailing ashore as HMS Dorsetshire and Cornwall, heavy cruisers caught in open water, take hit after hit. You watch through binoculars as Dorsetshire heels over, her boilers exploding in a mushroom of steam and fire. Sailors leap into shark-infested seas. 90 minutes later, both ships are gone, 550 British dead. Nagumo turns east, sinking the carrier Hermes and 2 destroyers days later. The Royal Navy flees the Indian Ocean. Aboard Yamato, anchored in Hiroshima Bay, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto receives the triumphant cables with a tight nod. The plan unfolds like clockwork. Since Pearl Harbor, the Empire has seized Malaya in 70 days. Singapore, the Gibraltar of the East, surrendering 85,000 British troops to General Tomoyuki Yamashita's 30,000. Hong Kong fallen. The Philippines overrun. MacArthur fleeing to Australia with his famous vow. Wake Island, Guam, the Dutch East Indies, oil fields captured intact. Japanese flags fly from Burma to the Solomons. Yamamoto's combined fleet runs wild, just as he promised. Carriers strike Darwin, Australia. Submarines shell California oil fields. The Doolittle raid in April, B-25s launching from USS Hornet to bomb Tokyo, stings like a mosquito bite. Minor damage, but it humiliates the emperor. Yamamoto seethes. The Americans dared reach the homeland. He orders an elaborate response, Operation MI, the seizure of Midway Atoll, to lure the U.S. carriers into a decisive battle and destroy them. You can almost feel the momentum, the exhilaration sweeping Tokyo. Newspapers scream victories, civilians cheer parades. Yamamoto, however, paces the Yamamoto's vast teak deck alone at night, chain-smoking American cigarettes. He knows the numbers. Japan's merchant fleet is already bleeding from submarine attacks. American shipyards launch Liberty ships faster than U-boats can sink them. Essex-class carriers slide down ways in weeks, not years. Japan's 6 fleet carriers faced 20 by 1943, perhaps 50 by 1944. His chiefs of staff argue for the Midway Plan, trap the Yankees, annihilate their carriers, force a negotiated peace. Yamamoto agrees, but not from confidence, from necessity. We must inflict a crushing defeat soon, or the material disparity will become insurmountable. Codebreakers at Hypo Station in Pearl Harbor, led by Commander Joseph Rochefort, already cracked JN-25. They know the target is Midway. Admiral Chester Nimitz prepares the ambush. Task Forces 16 and 17, carriers Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown, waiting northeast of the atoll. June 4th, Yamamoto steams west, 700 miles behind Nagumo's 4 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, plus 2 light carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, the Grand Fleet, 200 ships, the greatest armada in Japanese history. He believes dispersion will shield him from submarines, but it also blinds him. Radio silence hides the American presence. Dawn, June 4th. Nagumo launches 108 planes against Midway. They report the island lightly defended, request a second strike. Then the scout plane from cruiser Tone, 42 minutes late, spots the American fleet. Enemy carrier sighted. Nagumo hesitates. Rearmed torpedo planes with bombs or torpedoes? The decks swarm with fueled, armed aircraft when American dive bombers appear. From the cockpit of Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey, VF-6 off Enterprise, Yamamoto spots the Japanese carriers below. "Attack," he orders. You feel the dive, the stomach-lurching plunge, wind screaming past the canopy, Akagi growing huge in the bomb sight. Bombs whistle down. One slams into Akagi's deck amid fueled planes and torpedoes. Secondary explosions rip her apart. Minutes later, Kaga and Soryu burn furiously. 3 fleet carriers gutted in 6 minutes. Hiryu strikes back, crippling Yorktown, but its own planes return to find her aflame from Hornet and Enterprise bombers. By nightfall, all 4 Nagumo's carriers are doomed, sinking or scuttled.
February 1943, Truk Lagoon, Caroline Islands. The humid air hangs heavy over the anchorage, a forest of masts and pagoda superstructures rising from turquoise waters ringed by palm-fringed atolls. Your commander, Yasuji Watanabe, Yamamoto's loyal aide, watching the admiral descend the accommodation ladder from Yamato's quarterdeck into the launch that will take him to shore. His step is slower now, the limp from an old wound more pronounced. The white uniform hangs looser on his frame. The once sharp eyes seem to look past everything. Truk, the Gibraltar of the Pacific, bristles with warships, but the illusion of strength crumbles under scrutiny. Carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku steam in for repairs after Guadalcanal maulings. Junyo and Hayo, converted liners, lack the punch of the lost fleet carriers. New construction, Taiho, Unryu, won't arrive for months, and even then, air groups are skeletal. Pilots train with half the flight hours Americans demand. Fuel stocks dwindle, tankers fall to prowling U.S. submarines. Yamamoto meets with his staff in the flagship's wardroom that evening, maps spread under green-shaded lamps. Guadalcanal has just been evacuated, 25,000 Japanese dead or diseased for a worthless jungle strip. The Americans hop forward, New Georgia next, then Bougainville, the Marshalls. He listens to the reports in silence, then speaks softly. We are trading space for time we do not have. No one argues. They all feel it, the relentless American advance, island by island, like a noose tightening. Later, alone in his sea cabin, Yamamoto dictates a letter to a childhood friend, Chiyoko Kawai, in Nagaoka. You stand outside the door, catching fragments through the thin bulkhead. The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. I go forward each day with the resolve to give my life for the emperor and the nation. The words are formal, but his voice cracks on the last phrase. He knows the endgame. American codebreakers have intensified. Japanese radio traffic is compromised. Submarines sink 1.5 million tons of merchant shipping in 1942 alone, more than Japan can build in 2 years. April 1943, Rabaul, New Britain. Yamamoto decides on Operation I-Go, a desperate air offensive to blunt Allied momentum in the Solomons. Hundreds of aircraft from the carriers and land bases strike Guadalcanal, Port Moresby, Oro Bay. Initial claims soar, 175 enemy planes downed, ships sunk. Yamamoto cables Tokyo, a glorious victory. But reconnaissance soon reveals the truth. Barely 25 American aircraft lost, most ships damaged but afloat. Japanese losses, 50 irreplaceable pilots. He stares at the corrected reports, then crumples the paper in his fist. That night he confides in you over sake in his quarters. Watanabe-kun, the Americans replace everything, planes, pilots, ships, as fast as we destroy them. We cannot. Every battle weakens us more than them. His hand trembles slightly as he pours. At Midway I knew. Now I feel it in my bones. We have lost the war. Yet duty binds him. He refuses resignation, refuses to counsel surrender. Bushido demands he fight on, even in defeat.
To boost morale, he plans a frontline inspection tour, Rabaul, Buin, Balale, flying in his personal Betty bomber escorted by 6 Zeros. You argue against it. Intelligence warns of increased American patrols. He waves you off with a tired smile. A commander must be seen by his men. April 18, 1943, dawn departure from Rabaul. 2 G-4M Betty bombers lift off, Yamamoto in the lead aircraft with his chief of staff, Vice Admiral Ugaki, in the second. You watch them disappear into the low clouds, a knot in your stomach. Over Bougainville at 9:35 a.m., 16 P-38 Lightnings of the 339th Fighter Squadron, tipped off by cracked Japanese codes, ambush the formation at treetop height. Captain Thomas Lanfear and Lieutenant Rex Barber close on Yamamoto's Betty. Cannon and machine gun fire rip the fuselage. The bomber bursts into flame, trailing black smoke as it spirals into the jungle near Buin. Ugaki's plane crashes into the sea. He survived, wounded, only to die by suicide later. Rescue parties find Yamamoto's body the next day, still strapped in his seat amid the wreckage, white-gloved hands gripping his katana, 2 bullet wounds in his head and back. The architect of Pearl Harbor, the prophet of doom, gone at 59. News of his death is hidden from the Japanese public for weeks. When announced, it's framed as heroic sacrifice. But in the high command, the truth spreads like frost. The man who saw the future clearest is dead, and the war he knew was lost rages on without him for 2 more years and 2 atomic flashes. One final question lingers over the smoking jungle crash site. If Yamamoto had lived, could his voice have shortened the agony? Or was the path to surrender impossible until everything burned? August 1945, the White House, Washington, D.C. The summer heat presses against the windows of the Oval Office, but the air inside is cool and still. Your President Harry Truman, seated at the resolute desk, the weight of the world etched into the lines of your face. A single folder lies open before you, top-secret reports from Los Alamos, stamped Manhattan Project. The words blur for a moment. The gadget is ready. Yield estimated 20,000 tons TNT. 4 years have passed since that Sunday morning in Pearl Harbor. 4 years since Yamamoto's carriers struck and vanished, leaving oil and fire and rage behind. You remember the newsreels, the burning Arizona, the twisted wreckage, the bodies floating in the harbor. America awoke that day, not with a yawn, but with a roar. The giant stirred first in the factories. Detroit's assembly lines that once built Fords now poured out B-24 Liberators, 1 every 63 minutes at Willow Run. Shipyards in California, Maine, and Virginia launched Liberty ships faster than Japanese submarines could sink them, 2,700 in 4 years. By 1944, America's industrial output equaled that of Germany, Japan, and Britain combined. Essex-class carriers rolled off the ways at the rate of 1 every few months, 24 in total, plus 100 escort carriers. Pilots trained by the tens of thousands, flight hours triple those of their Japanese counterparts. The Pacific became a highway of steel. From Midway's reversal, the tide rolled forward. Guadalcanal bled the Imperial Navy white. Tarawa, Saipan, Iwo Jima, each island a slaughterhouse where Japanese defenders fought to the last man, banzai charges crashing against flamethrowers and naval gunfire. Admiral Mark Michener's Task Force 58, fast carriers screened by new battleships like Iowa and New Jersey, hammered the Marianas, the Philippines, Formosa. The Battle of Leyte Gulf, October 1944, the largest naval engagement in history, where Japan's surface fleet was effectively annihilated. Yamato herself, Yamamoto's former flagship, sailed south on a suicide mission and never returned, sunk by American carrier aircraft off Samar. By early 1945, B-29 superfortresses flew unchallenged from Tinian and Guam. Curtis LeMay's fire raids turned Tokyo to ash on March 9-10th, 100,000 dead in a single night, wooden cities burning like kindling. Japan's merchant fleet, 90% gone. Oil imports, zero. Factories idle. Civilians starving on 1,000 calories a day. Okinawa fell in June after 82 days of horror. 12,500 Americans dead, 110,000 Japanese, and 150,000 Okinawan civilians caught in the crossfire. Kamikaze pilots plunged into the fleet, but the math no longer favored Japan. For every ship sunk, 10 more steamed over the horizon. Now, in August, the final choice. Invasion of the home islands. Operation Downfall looms in November. Estimates, 500,000 American casualties, millions of Japanese. Truman signs the order for the atomic bomb. August 6th, Hiroshima. A single B-29, Enola Gay, piloted by Colonel Paul Tibbets, releases Little Boy at 8:15 a.m. The flash blinds pilots 170 miles away. A city of 350,000 vanishes in fire and blast. 70,000 dead instantly. August 9th, Nagasaki. Fat Man falls. Another 40,000 gone. On the battleship USS Missouri, anchored in Tokyo Bay, September 2nd, 1945, you stand on the veranda deck as Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu signs the instrument of surrender, his wooden leg clacking against the teak. General Douglas MacArthur's voice carries over the loudspeakers. Let us pray that peace be now.